You will never catch me doing that, Priscilla. I will never.
You're not going to do it?
No.
Are you not a daredevil at all?
You could not pay me $1 gazillion dollars.
I think I could convince you.
No, Priscilla. I don't want to do it.
We'll see.
Life is like a roller coaster, but it's better when we go through it together. Welcome to the Candace Cameron Bure Podcast. We're here to share conversations about life's challenges, celebrations, and everything in between. Season 8 is called Moving Beyond Belief, and I'm joined by Priscilla Shire. Come join us. Hey there.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
Back for another round.
I love it. I'm so glad we get to do this together.
Me too. I'm learning so much. I feel refreshed.
Me too.
It's so good to think back to where you've been and where God has brought you. That's right. And some people are listening for the first time and they're just starting their journey. And some are people that, like me or like you already have some stories to tell. And it's really good to think about those and just think like all that God's done in your life, especially through the hard stuff.
Yes. And it gives you encouragement for the future because you get a little bit down the road and you look back and go, oh my gosh, if he used that, if he was able to make something valuable come out of that, if he sustained me through that, then it just reminds you like whatever you're going through right now, that will one day be in hindsight as well. Yeah. And you'll see God's grace and his fingerprints all over this part of your life as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about everything you're becoming.
I think this is, I don't know, maybe chapter 6 in the book or so. I surrender all, everything you're becoming. I love the word becoming so much because it implies that there's process always happening, that there is no arrival, no destination. I'm there, nowhere else to grow.
Right. It's a journey.
It's a journey, and that you're supposed to enjoy the journey and be invested in each part of the journey because that's worth it. Jerry and I just celebrated 25 years of marriage.
Congratulations.
So cool. Thank you. I can't believe it. I remember when we first got married and we thought about people who'd been married 25 years as like the old people.
Yeah.
And then one day you wake up and you go, it's us. We're the old
We're the old people.
Yes. But one of the things we did was we have not spent a lot of time in Hawaii at all. So we thought, well, let's just go to Hawaii. And one of the stops was in Maui. And we kept hearing everybody talk about the road to Hana.
Yes.
Hana. And so it is literally, have you?
Yes.
My sister was telling us because she loves it so much. And she's just telling us that basically it is the drive is the destination. Like it's a 3-hour situation, which we didn't do the whole thing, but it's a little teeny windy road through this gorgeous, spectacular rainforest that's on like the side of a mountain overlooking the ocean.
Yeah.
And there are stops along the way, like little trucks out there that have coffees and homemade breads. And then there are little beaches you can pull over if you want. Like I heard there's a black sand beach that we didn't even, and waterfalls. And yes. So the point is, if you're just trying to get to the end of it, the road, the end of whatever the end is, where you literally just turn around and come back, then you've missed the whole point of the road to Hana, that it is actually the journey.
Yeah.
That is the destination. And so keeping your eyes open and being fully engaged and aware of the rainforest that you're passing and the road that you're on and the little pit stop along the way that you get to taste this homemade banana bread we found from some family that was out there. That's what they do, is just allow people to have a little snack on the road. And if you're disengaged because you're just waiting to get to the end, you miss the whole point of the ride.
Yeah.
So that to me is what becoming implies, that throughout our entire lifetime, we realize that this part of the journey is a part of the story. And that if I disengage because I just want to move on to the next part, or I want to get to the end, wherever that is, then I'm missing out on the beauty of becoming, growing, maturing.
Wouldn't that be sanctification?
Totally. That's exactly what sanctification is, which is a process throughout a lifetime.
Yeah.
That only when we see Jesus face to face will we'll be perfect, meaning it's over, it's done, development process over. But while we're here on earth, we're constantly learning, growing. Our perspective is shifting. Our mind is shifting. we're hopefully seeing life differently than we did 10 years ago this time. I mean, we better be looking at life differently than we did yesterday.
Right.
You know?
Do you feel like the older you get, the more you realize you don't know anything?
Totally. There's a great humility that comes with aging.
Yeah.
Because you do recognize, gosh, I was such a little know-it-all early on.
Yep.
I thought I had it all together.
Yep.
I said things so emphatically as if it is so. And then you grow up and you realize, oh, wait a minute. This is a moving, shifting.
Yeah.
There are gray areas, not in terms of principles, but there are gray areas in the way they outwork in people's lives and the dynamics that are you could never know, because just because they're not your experience doesn't mean they're not unexperienced, a valid experience. So you kind of realize that and you realize how important grace is in the becoming for you and for the people around you. You just want to give them a little bit of grace because they're on a journey just like you.
And as we grow older, that's who I want to continue to become is a person of grace. Because I do find that with a generation or two older than me, my parents, even my grandparents, you kind of become one way or another. You either are a person of grace and you're like, child, just, it's okay. Just wait.
Relax. It's fine.
It's okay. Or I find that people become very hardened and bitter. Like this is just the way it is. And, you know, nothing's ever going to change. And they become so jaded in life. So I like this becoming, and we're going to become people that have extended grace for all of us to realize that our way is not the only way in terms of, again, not compromising principle.
Right.
But even when we talked about people living in other parts of the world, like if I don't have that experience, then I just don't know. But it doesn't mean that my way's the right way.
Totally. Yeah. And in regards to, what our entire conversation through all these episodes have been, our spiritual maturity, it's the same thing that we're constantly asking ourselves, Lord, how can I be more like you? How can I reflect more of your vantage point and perspective today than I was able to yesterday?
Yeah.
And, you know, Henry Blackaby. Do you remember Henry Blackaby? I was talking to some 20-year-olds that were at my house the other day with my son. It was like 4 of them. They're having conversations. And I said, do y'all know who Henry Blackaby is? And they were like, no, we've never heard of him. And I was like, no, immediately go. In fact, I got on Amazon immediately and ordered Experiencing God, the workbook, which he wrote probably 30 years ago now, which needs to be a staple in everybody's life, just in terms of what it means to grow with God and have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
But I say all this to say, one time years ago, he visited our church. I think he was maybe around 90 or so when he passed away recently, actually. But he must have been at our church when he was about 75, 72, somewhere in there. So almost 20 years ago. And I happened to be sitting next to him at the little breakfast between services. We had a little breakfast before he spoke again at church. And I happened to be sitting next to him. So I took advantage of the opportunity to just ask him a couple of questions. It's Henry Black, you know?
Yeah.
And so I said to this man, how do you know, like when you're hearing the voice of God and when you're pleasing God and you're in his will? And I'm expecting a seminary course with emphatic details on how this man knows when you're in the will of God. And he looked back at me and he said, with the sweetest, gracious expression and kindness, he just said, you know, Priscilla, the older and older I get, the more I realize that most of the time it's not until hindsight that I know whether or not I was actually in God's will. But I just know the Lord is going to honor the fact that my heart's desire when I made that decision was to honor him. And even my mistakes, somehow in his grace and mercy, he uses those as the best teachers for the future.
Wow.
So the point of his response to me was, I don't know yet. Here's a 70-something-year-old man that's saying, I'm still growing and I'm still learning and I'm grateful for God's grace that allows me to even use mistakes as teachers for the future so I can keep on just trying to serve the Lord and honor him. And when I heard that and responses like that from elders in the faith, it occurs to me that all of us in every stage are still becoming what the Lord has for us to be. And so, like you said, we pray, Lord, don't let me get rigid and hard and kind of callous to growth. but allow me to just continue to sit underneath your grace to me that allows even my mistakes to become teachers towards the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Talk to me about what it looks like to make every effort.
Yes. So there's this verse in 2 Peter chapter 1. Peter's talking about really spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. And there's this one verse where after talking about the great and precious promises that we have been given by God and the spiritual inheritance that has been given to us because of our relationship with God through Christ Jesus, then he comes to like verse 5 and he's like, so because of that, make every effort to keep on growing. So there's this one side of the coin where he's like, you've been given everything that you need, spiritual promises and inheritance and power and all the things. And then he says, because of that, there's another side of the coin. Make an effort to capitalize on what it is that you have been given access to. So it's not a commission to lazy Christianity. It actually is supposed to be the impetus for us working to cooperate with this growing process. So, I have 3 boys, Jackson, Jerry Jr., and Jude. Jude is our youngest and he's our surprise boy. Like, we still don't actually know how Jude got here. In fact, when he was born, I named him Jude on purpose because that's as close as I could get to Revelation. Because I was like, it is finished. This is it right here.
Stop it.
Jackson, Jerry Jr.,
so good.
and Jude. And he, oh my gosh, he's like the light of our lives because he's such a character and he's so fun. And he's just been such a great surprise. So, and he also has my penchant for when I was growing up being a little bit mischievous. And I remember when he was 4, maybe 5, we're in the mall and we're going from the first floor to the second floor, the whole family. Mm-hmm. Well, we're on the escalator going up and I look down and I realize Jude is not there. And I look at the adjacent escalator that's going down and there he is on the down escalator and he's walking up. He's doing what kids do sometime where they just decided to go up the down escalator. Yep. So he's putting one foot in front of the other. And of course, I see people coming down the escalator and they're looking at the bad kid. Whose mother is this? Whose kid does this belong to that's letting him go down this elevator? So I'm like, oh my gosh, Jude, boy, if you don't ride that escalator down and get on this right escalator, I'm gonna hurt you. And he stands still. As soon as he stands still, he starts immediately going down. Mm-hmm. He didn't have to try to go down. He was standing on something down that was going down. Mm-hmm. So it was automatic. And I thought about that for a second. Oh my goodness. If we want to go up, if we don't put some effort in and take some steps, we are automatically going to be declining in our spiritual growth because we are standing on something that's going down. I mean, it is not hard to see that there is a moral decline. Mm-hmm. There is a spiritual decline, even just in the respect people have for what used to be an average respect for morality. So like true. Even if people weren't Christians, the principles in the Bible, they at least thought were worth respecting. And now we live in a day and age
we can talk about politics right now and
we
even
could.
the 10 Commandments.
But should we?
I know, probably not. But the 10 Commandments in and out of school. And this is where I have to ask for self-control because I've actually heard my friends, people I call my friends say, no, the 10 Commandments are bad. I'm sorry.
Or even just a reference to God and appreciation for God.
Yeah, it's wild to me. It's really, it's stunning. Yes. Okay. We understand.
We agree.
The decline in many ways.
It is very clear. The division, there's chaos sort of ensuing all around us. And you don't have to be Christian to at least acknowledge, there's a lot happening. That's confusion and chaos that's swirling around us. So we are living on something that is in a state of decline. If we do not make an effort, like put some sweat equity in to the maintaining of values, morals, some sort of upwardly mobile movement in our spiritual growth, then in other words, neutrality is not an option. You stand still, there's going to be some sort of decline. It's the same thing. An illustration would be in our physical bodies. If we're not actively lifting weights, if there's not resistance, if we're not going to the gym, if we're not thinking about what we're eating, we're going to find that if we just lay there in our beds day after day, it does not take long for us to see the muscular atrophy. When someone has a cast on, after 6 weeks, you take that cast off. This arm is smaller than the other, only because it wasn't being used. And that's the same thing with our spiritual lives. If we want to grow up, if we want to be healthy spiritually, if we want to have vibrancy in our spiritual life, then we actually have to exert effort in exercising the muscle.
Yes.
Otherwise, there will be atrophy.
Can I take this to another level and say that I want to say this as nicely as possible. Maybe you can help me with the words. But when we stand before God, we're not judged by our goodness that God's going to say, you were good enough to make it to heaven.
Right.
Or you weren't good enough to go to hell. So I would say that we're all on a road to hell. And I know that's bold and not many people want to hear that, but we're all on that road, but given the opportunity to make a choice and an effort that if we want relationship with God, he gives it to us freely to spend eternity with him. But being complacent, having actually having neutrality and going, well, I actually don't want to do anything. I'm just going to stand still. I don't want to think about it one way or another. You're still on that road, that declining road.
Agreed.
That's going to send you to a place you probably don't want to be.
Yeah, the place you don't want to be. Not even probably. You do not.
Yeah.
And so you're right. We get the opportunity through Jesus to have a relationship with God and to shift that trajectory. That's the way spiritual growth starts. It starts there really with a relationship with God. There is one way to have a relationship with God. That is also not politically correct to say, but it's so true. It's through Jesus Christ. It's this free gift that he gives us. This opportunity. And people that are skeptical of our faith, they often ask, you know, how could a God who is supposedly so kind and so good only give all of these people from all these different walks of life and backgrounds? He only gave them one way. Like, how is he good if he only gives people one way? And while it's a good question, it actually isn't the right question. The right question is not how could a God who is so good only give us one way? It's how could a God who's so holy give us any way?
Yeah.
Like, we should have no options. Because we are so different than he. And he doesn't have to have a relationship with us. He doesn't need us. So the fact that he gives us any way at all is a miracle and something that we should be so grateful for. And like you said, not be neutral about. So every person gets to make that decision. Will you place faith in Jesus Christ? And then when you do and receive this free gift, will now discipleship, which is spiritual growth, that's the part that comes at a cost. It's not about whether or not you get into heaven. It is about whether or not you are going to steward your time on earth in a way that will help you to yield the full fruit of everything that he put you here to yield. And Jesus said in Luke chapter 9, if anybody's going to come after me, he or she will deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. That sounds like sacrifice and surrender to me. But it's fulfillment and satisfaction as well. So salvation's free, but discipleship comes at a cost. You got to make some effort to resist everything your flesh wants and all the self-absorption of the culture that we live in, the hubris, the pride, the me. We resist that so that we can live in a way that honors Christ and reflect Christ's perspective and actions while we live.
The sacrifice can be hard.
Totally.
Well, you've shared so many incredible examples within your life. Do you have another place of sacrifice you can share with us?
Sacrifice and surrender. This is sort of I'm trying to think of anything more meaningful.
Listen, I can say that like in a very practical level, just with my job, like what has it cost me? What have I sacrificed to be bold in my faith in the industry that I'm in?
Yeah. What have you sacrificed to be bold in your faith?
I have sadly sacrificed friendships.
I'm sure.
I'm a very relational person. I value people so much and my relationships dearly. And so I've had to sacrifice relationships, and some that weren't ones I wanted to sacrifice, but just
like they just weren't headed in the same direction you were headed.
Yeah. Or lost them, I should say. The sacrifice was like, I didn't have a choice over it, but just lost them. Like it's come at a cost. My finances have come at a cost. I've just flat out lost jobs. I've flat out lost partnerships. I've flat out had doors closed in my face because of my faith.
Yeah.
And that costs something. You feel it. There's effects of it. I'm grateful. I'm kind of like the little engine that could, and I just keep going and going and try to make a way. And God has opened those doors, but it's painful. Linger longer in the Bible as you draw near to God. Inspire offers a creative way to engage with, meditate on, and respond to Scripture, offering hundreds of beautiful line art illustrations to capture a new way of journaling. There are 8 unique editions of Inspire, and each edition has its own set of more than 400 full and partial page Scripture line art illustrations for coloring. Join the global community of Inspire Bible journalers who are expressing their creativity in the margins of their Bibles at the Inspire Bible and on all platforms, including YouTube. You can also learn more at inspirebible.com and download Filament Bible app. You'll also want to enter Tyndale's giveaway for a chance to win an Inspire Bible of your choice. You'll find the giveaway link in our show notes. This Christmas, people are still reeling from Hurricane Helene. Your $50 gift provides emergency essentials like food, water, and other critical supplies to one person. And your generosity will be doubled by matching funds, so $50 helps 2 people. Demonstrate God's love in a practical way this Christmas through World Help. They have a 4-star Charity Navigator rating. Double your gift securely at worldhelp.net/Candace. That's worldhelp.net/Candace.
And I would say, actually what I was thinking was along those same lines. Similarly, it's just, there are things put in front of you to do, opportunities that others would consider to be, why in the world would you say no to that? Why in the world would you not do that? But there's something in you that knows, not necessarily that it's wrong, it's just wrong for you. Yeah. This is not the season for it. This is not the time for it. This would not be the best use of the time, the talent, the treasure the Lord's entrusted to me in this season. And so saying no to that not only feels like a sacrifice, because maybe that opportunity would have been something that you would have just enjoyed, but it's not right for now.
Yeah.
But also the people attached to that are annoyed that you wouldn't do that. In some people's cases, like in your case, I don't know if you have an agent, but I'm saying people that are in the industry like that, when they say no to projects, there are other people attached to their no that are sort of breathing down their neck like, are you kidding me? Do you know what this could do for me?
Right.
This is,
I know.
For us, we're building something here and you're saying no.
Yeah.
So that there's sacrifice attached to that. And like you said, you feel that. Even if you have enough encouragement around you and support system around you to stick with it, it doesn't mean that your heart doesn't feel tender or that you feel a bit lonely or a bit tearful when you're by yourself and you realize that you've lost something, but you're trusting God to give it back to you in a different way because you've honored him. The space in between seeing those things happen is tough.
What are some of the things that when you're in that in-between stage, the efforts that you have to make? I mean, what are some of those things that you've had to focus on? I know for me, like patience is a huge one to just
waiting on God, trusting,
waiting and trusting.
Yeah. I would say making sure I stay tethered to community during that time. And outside of just like the local church, I'm talking about the community, the inner workings of the people that are in my circle, like my people.
Yeah.
That's a very small group of people that know me and I know them and I listen to them. They listen to me. There's encouragement there. Sometimes when you're feeling all soupy about something, it feels nice to isolate sometimes, just to be by yourself. Yeah. And there's something healthy about that for a season, but there can be something that immediately crosses a line to a very unhealthy place where you're all by yourself, stewing with whatever thoughts you're there with by yourself. And you really do need the voice of trusted people around you to continue to encourage you. You're okay.
Yeah.
You're on the right path. You're doing good. Hang in there. Be patient. Trust. Wait. You need people around you. It's kind of like accountability when you're working out, when you do not want to get up at 5 a.m. Sometimes the fact that you know your friend going to be there at the gym waiting on you and she's going to let you have it if you don't show up. Sometimes that's the only reason why you show up.
Yeah.
Is because accountability is what makes you keep showing up. You need people in your life that keep you accountable spiritually, that keep you accountable in your marriage, that keep you accountable as a mother when you're walking through seasons when you're like, or as a single woman. And you're trying to live holy in this culture that is salacious. And man, it seems like they're all making headway over there that are living like that. And you're over here kind of floundering. You need some people around you that are going, you're okay. Hang in there.
Yeah. Keep
honoring God. He's got you. If you don't have those voices, you can feel real alone real quick and the enemy can take full advantage of that real quick. Yeah.
Yeah. That it reminds me of James 1 when he says, consider it great joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of various kinds, because those trials produce endurance, and let endurance have its full effect so that it can be mature and complete, lacking nothing. So it's like that endurance in waiting on who you're becoming, but having the endurance while he's sanctifying you, while he's growing you and maturing you and changing you.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, the older and older I get, the less impressed I am with the famous and the more impressed I am with the faithful.
Me too.
I mean, just people who've endured. Like you look up at folks that have been married 50 years or 55 years or 60 years. I met this couple recently, 62 years they're on. And I'm just wide-eyed with wonder. Okay. Well, how did you, what?
Yeah, I know.
What kind of stick-to-itness is this? What kind of faithfulness is this? What lessons did you learn along the way? I am so enamored and attracted to and endeared to people that have gone the distance in any way, whether it's their marriage or now they're getting to enjoy their great grandkids, which means they've stuck through some things with their own children and grandchildren to get to enjoy this part of their life. I'm so intrigued by that kind of endurance because life is hard. So what did you walk through to get here?
Yeah.
And if you did it, that encourages me that I can do it too.
Totally.
Yeah.
Speaking of great grandparents, my mom and dad just became great grandparents.
Are you serious?
So my brother's daughter had the first grandchild of all. There's 17 grandkids between the four of us. So she just had the first.
Oh my gosh, which makes you a great aunt.
I'm a great aunt, but it's so exciting. It's so exciting. But my parents have been married 55 years and both my grandparents over 60 years too. And it's so true. I'm in awe of the endurance.
It has
rare
helped
me
to see
through
people
my own
endure.
marriage so much to see the example and then glean the wisdom or from what they taught me.
We live, in a instant gratification culture. Everybody wants it now. They want success now. They want to reap the benefits now.
Yep.
And so finding people who've just stayed the course in whatever way, building the ministry the Lord entrusted to them or the business, the marriage, the family.
I know.
And they've stayed the course. It's just kind of like,
I know.
I love you. Can you tell me how was that?
Totally. I know. I think of my pastor who's been preaching over 30 or I don't even want to say 40 years, but I think he's in his 60s now. And he started this just like your dad, it's just, I'm amazed at the longevity and the endurance. And that is so attractive in a quality that I'm like, yes, that over fame. I don't care about that. It's like, how are you doing life so well and just living it out and you're consistent? And
because it occurs to you what it cost them to do that they didn't accidentally get to that point in their life. They made daily decisions that translated to the long haul over time.
Yeah.
There's a woman in my church, just as by way of sharing a different example, there's a woman in my church. She is 70 now. She doesn't look a day of 70. And she's been like a part of either over it or a part of like this fitness ministry we have at our church for, 35, 40 years. Okay.
Yeah.
So I've watched this woman from the time I was 10 doing aerobics classes and, biking things, hiking things, all these things. And throughout the course of these 40 years, every now and then I run across Miss Sheila's path and I'll say to her, so what are you doing right now? Like, what are you eating right now? What's your workout right now? And it's changed significantly through the years, because what you're doing at 23 is different than when you're 62.
Of course.
And so she would tell me, this is a little hard on my joints now. So I do this now. And this doesn't work for my body now in terms of food intake. So I do this now. So I've watched her make the shifts that are necessary and required for the hormonal differences that have come with age, the joint the requirements needed. She's just shifted, but she stayed consistent over all of these years with maintaining her health. Mm-hmm. So even in that department, deciding, you know what, I'm going to take care of this body. This is the only body I get. And watching this woman in my church go, I'm going to make whatever shifts I need to make, but I'm going to try to just stay consistent as best I can. And by the way, she went through breast cancer maybe about 8 years ago, riddled her body and the chemotherapy and the double mastectomy and all of that. And she still said, okay, but here's what I have. And I'm going to do the best I can to maintain the health that I can maintain. So to watch her having endured through all of these shifts and changes and health scares and surprises, but still say, but you know what? This is still the body God gave me. So now at 70, she's still making decisions about what's best for her physical health, the walking and the bike riding and whatever. That in and of itself is encouraging to me. As a woman, it's encouraging. Like, okay, it'll look different in different seasons of my life, but she's endured through a lot to just say, but I'm going to take care of what God gave me. It's a big deal.
On becoming, it really is that endurance with the point of connection that we talked about last week or a few weeks ago. It's staying plugged into the root.
Absolutely. Right? And endurance implies resistance. If you're enduring, that means there's something pressing, there's a headwind and you're having to push against it in order to keep moving forward. And so the gist of becoming is realizing that life includes resistance and that God's Spirit is designed, his work in us is designed to help us press forward even when we feel the weight of life weighing us down. Not in our strength and not in our power, but by the Spirit of God, you can keep going.
You can.
You can. And it won't be a bed of roses all the time. And you won't always feel happy and all the things that become people's primary pursuits. The Lord in his grace and mercy gives us days where we feel happy and peaceful and all of that. But sometimes it's just a decision. That I'm going to put one foot in front of the other. I'm going to keep walking up the escalator, even though I feel my quads are hurting a little bit. But I'm going to take this next step. And keep moving forward in obedience to the Lord.
That's so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should we take a listener question?
Let's do it.
We have a couple today. This is from Debbie. We talked about identity last week. She says, how do I start over and let the past go?
You know, that is a question that has such a layered answer, because if you condense that answer, it can almost sound like you're minimizing and can feel minimizing to the person on the other side of a question like that, because the past can be weighty and heavy. And it's a process to the actual coming back to health in your soul, forgiving, all of those deep things that require sometimes, like therapy we talked about in one of the other episodes, somebody holding your hand and helping you to actually practically walk through getting back to health. So I don't want an answer to sound like we're minimizing that, but moving forward requires moving away from what is tethered you to your past and making, in other words, your feelings aren't necessarily the engine here. They're the caboose. You can't let them drive what you're going to do. So moving forward into what you want your new life to be shaped by, do that. Act like that. Become that. If you want to change I'm using an example here, but if you want to change your health, for example, we've talked about that a little bit. Well, you have to start doing today what is in line with where you're headed. It won't feel good because you still have some of the baggage from yesterday on your person. You know what I mean? Your health is still what it is. Your cholesterol numbers are still what it is right now, but you can't let that determine what you do tomorrow. You have to make decisions tomorrow that are in line with where you're going. And in doing that, you can more and more let go of what has been indicative of your health up to that point. But it starts with a daily choice that will feel, it won't feel good when you start walking, start riding the bike, stop, decide not to eat all the sugar. It will be like withdrawals.
Yeah.
But you're having to make that choice that I'm going to do what lines up with where I'm headed, regardless of the way I feel, and then trust that the feelings will start to catch up as I move forward towards where I'm headed tomorrow.
My friend recently moved and it was a good, positive move. And she called me because she's trying to find a new church where she lives in a new state. And she said to me, I need to help me find a church. God says that I am a new creature in Christ. And my friend's been walking with the Lord, but she's like, I am a new creature and I want to walk forward. I don't want to sit in what I'm in. I think they were, their family was at a church that maybe wasn't as spirit-filled, I should say. And she said, I feel like I'm still sitting in my life in a way that is not allowing me, I'm not being encouraged by the church to move forward and be the new creature I am in Christ. She's like, I want to just shed the old skin. I want to celebrate my life. I want to celebrate God. All of these things. I mean, she was just riled up in the best of ways. And she's like, that's how I want to live from this day forward. I think it was it's a new place. It was a new beginning. And she's like, I want to start this off right. And it kind of feels like what we're talking about right now. It's like, she's like, I want to take the steps on who I am becoming, who I see, who I want to be in God.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit stagnant.
And I feel like when we talk about discipleship, which has been kind of the overarching theme of all our conversations, you have to have some people in your life who are further down the road than you are. In that regard, for example, someone whose zealousness for the Lord, whose friendship with God, whose wisdom and discernment you've admired because they have shaken off the old. You're watching them walk in the newness of life. There's something about their faith that shimmers with a sacred beauty and palpable power that makes you go, oh, I need a little bit of what they got going on.
Yeah.
Discipleship is intentionally tethering your life to someone whose life mirrors what it is that you want to emulate so that their example can encourage you. And also you can have a practical vision for where you're headed and how to get there.
Yeah.
The book, I Surrender All, is dedicated to John and Trina Jenkins. They are about 10 to 15 years, Jerry and I senior. And for 20 years, it's like the Lord just gave them to us 20 years ago. This couple has raised 6 kids. They have their grandkids now. They've been married for 40 years, Jerry and I for 25. And I mean, their marriage has been a sounding board for me and Jerry. We have tethered our lives to theirs for 20 years. And it has made the difference that where we wanted our marriage to be, what we wanted our communication to look like, our playfulness with one another, the health we wanted to have in communication and our sex life and finances. Yeah. We were able to have a couple that we could look at and go, okay, we can talk to them about these practical things. We can admire what it is, the hard things they've been through and how we've watched them maintain health in their marriage despite those hard things, how they've raised their children, the joyful chaos of 6 kids with 6 different personalities and interests and the chaos of that, them inviting us into their home and in their life and into deep conversation. Without that, to sort of have it's almost like a, when someone goes parachuting for the first time, they jump out and there's somebody that's behind them that's done this before.
Right.
And that give you a sense of security. So, you are not free falling all by yourself. And I know when to pull the parachute.
You will never catch me doing that, Priscilla. I don't care how many people are strapped to me.
You're not going to do it?
No.
Are you not a daredevil at all?
Not in that. You could not pay me $1 gazillion to jump out of a plane.
I think I could convince you. Maybe we should do it together.
No, Priscilla. I don't want to do it.
We'll
I don't want to do it.
We'll see.
I understand your point, though. Great illustration. However, one that I will never do.
We'll see.
Okay, one more quick listener question. Okay. This is from Cindy, and she said, how do you connect your head to your heart when you've been disconnected for so many years? Whew, that's a tough one. I'm like, I'm not a psychologist. Cindy,
that's the way I feel about that question.
I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have asked it. How do you connect your head to your heart? That seems like there's a lot of
layers to that. I might be too dogmatic about this, but I just feel like, feelings do not have intellect. They're not smart. Mm-hmm. They just feel. Mm-hmm. And that's not to minimize feelings. They're important. They're a part of our God-given makeup. Mm-hmm. They're just not supposed to be the engine driving our choices, right? So I kind of feel like it's a lot. It's a lot in there. But I just feel like, as we talked about earlier, about obedience to God, especially as we're becoming, as we're on the journey, as we're trying to follow and honor God, obey. Do what you know is the right thing to do. Trust God with your feelings. Lord, I want to honor you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do what's right. Even if my feelings don't line up with that, I'd actually prefer to do this over here. But this I can see clearly from your word, wise counsel, is the right thing for me to do. So I'm going to honor you. And then I'm going to trust that you are not only powerful enough. Sometimes when we think of God's power, we think of big miracles, supernatural changing our circumstances stuff. Mm-hmm. But sometimes, to me, the biggest miracle that God ever does is in changing my heart, mm-hmm. changing my mind, mm-hmm. changing me so that on the inside, I line up with the obedience that I want so much to give to him as an offering. Yeah. So that is a very simplified way of saying, just obey God, do what God's asking you to do, and then say, Lord, here's my honesty about my feelings. I don't feel this, but I believe that if you're big enough to change circumstances, to make the walls of Jericho come tumbling down, to divide the Red Sea, if you're big enough for all that, then I'm going to trust that you're big enough actually also to make my feelings start lining up with what would most honor you through my life.
Yeah. You answered that so well.
It's easier said than done.
Right there.
Oh my goodness.
That was great. This is a good episode, Priscilla. Thanks for
I enjoyed it so much.
Hanging in there with me.
Yes.
On kind of some of the heavy stuff,
I love it.
But I love talking about it. So thank you. Don't forget, guys, we have something special for you this season. We're calling it a personal prayer guide. And it's our way of encouraging you to affirm and pray for your family and to grow in your relationship with God. Go to Candace.com to find the link. It's also in our show notes. And there's also a link to Priscilla's book, which we are talking about this whole season, I Surrender All. Until next time, be grateful all day, every day. Hi, parents. If you have young kids, you're going to want the Generous Kids Book Club. It is the perfect subscription. You get a new hardcover book every month packed with fun stories, stickers, and activities that teach important values like generosity. Don't forget about our 10-book bundle and individual selections as well. Visit generousfamily.com to grab yours. A special thanks to Lifeway Publishers of the Experiencing God Bible Study for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Over the years, God has used the truths in Experiencing God to awaken believers to a radically God-centered way of life. As a result, millions have come to know God intimately, to recognize His voice, and to understand His will for their lives. This new special edition is revised, updated, and ready to lead you again, or for the very first time, into a deeper relationship with God. Experiencing God for adults, Experiencing God for teens, the CSB Experiencing God Bible, over 50 published resources are all available at lifeway.com. God is inviting you to experience Him in an intimate love relationship through which He reveals to you His will, His ways, and His work. From Genesis to Revelations, we know that God speaks to His people. This book has been read by over 8 million people and published in over 75 languages. Find yours at lifeway.com/experiencing God. Candy Rock Entertainment, all rights reserved.